chasing investors instead of chasing customers. That's one big mistake. Investors come because of customers, not the other way. Try and chase traction. You will always get the right set of talent, right set of investors, right set of advisors. What's most important is having customers on the table.
Hello and welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Cariappa. Aman Goel graduated with a degree in computer science from IIT Bombay, one of the most prestigious institutions in India. But unlike others in his batch, he chose to do something different. He passed on a well-paying job at a Valley startup to start up on his own instead. Last year, Cogno AI, the company that Aman built, got acquired by the cloud telephony leader Exotel. In this podcast, we cover Aman's journey from selling to large enterprises to bootstrapping his way into an acquisition. This is a super inspiring conversation, so stay tuned to this podcast with Aman Goel. Hey Aman, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks, Roshan. It's glad to be a part of the podcast.
Yeah. And congratulations on the acquisition as well. I mean, we'll talk about it a little more in detail later in the conversation, but mighty congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
So Aman, let's rewind the clock and let's go right back to the time you were in college, right? You started Cogno right out of college. And,
right.
What was the motivation behind that? I mean, did you just think that it might be more profitable for you to start something on your own versus, joining another company, or, what led you to start up Cogno?
So this goes back to 2016 when I was a summer intern at a startup called Rubrik. They are based out of Palo Alto, and this was summers of 2016 at the end of my third year of college. I worked as a technical intern there in the software engineering team, and it was a fantastic experience to work in a company, to work at a fast-growing startup, super smart people doing kick-ass stuff, right? So that got me interested in the startup world. At that time, in fact, by spending 3 months in the Bay Area, I realized one thing, that I cannot stay away from my family and my parents. So I realized that as a long-term option for me, it doesn't make sense to stay in the Bay Area, work here, and so on and so forth. But rather, staying in India makes more sense for me. So that was one thing. And in India, I obviously wanted to evaluate between jobs versus starting something of my own. Then I realized that I have full fourth year of college with me to experiment, to fail, to try out things, right? In the fourth year, I'm not expected to earn money, which means I can fail without any problems, right? Without any expectations. In IIT Bombay, which is the college from which I graduated, there are a few good things. Number one, I didn't have to go for any master's, honors mandatorily, right? So it's up to me whether I want to go for that or not. Because I had pre-placement offer, I didn't have to sit for placements as well. Plus, the undergrad project is also optional in the computer science department. So I don't know if they have made any changes now with other departments as well, but that I'm telling you the scenario back in 2016-17 year for me. So I had completed almost all my courses and credits. So the fourth year was essentially totally empty for me. That's when I took up classes in entrepreneurship department, and that's what got me started. So a combination of what was happening in Silicon Valley, the experience I learned there, plus having a complete fourth year time, 1 year of time idle, that got me thinking into something new beyond jobs.
Right. So did you consider the opportunity cost at all? I mean, because IIT Bombay computer science, I mean, I'm sure there's a hefty package at the end of it all, right, waiting for you. So did you do that, and how did you convince your family and folks around you?
Yes, so it was very complicated. I'll tell you, I had a very good job offer from Rubrik in their Palo Alto office. But then I ended up talking to them and telling them that, look, I want to stay in India. I had heard during my internship that they were open to open an office in India. So I told them that if you are opening an office in India, why don't you extend me an offer there? That will be much preferred. So that was the first thing I did. Second, basically our first client, they gave us a purchase order just, I think, 15 days before my job joining. So that was the second point, right? Before job joining, if you have a large enough purchase order from the first enterprise client, it was a large bank, right? So we thought that, me and my co-founder, we thought that, it's good enough to leave the jobs, right? So that's the second point. Thirdly, what we did was, you raised the point on parents. So coming from a middle class family, like my job offer was much, much larger than, let's say, what my father earns in a year, obviously. So for them, it was a big question whether I should go for a startup or whether I should not go there and rather continue with my job. So here is what I did. So I helped Rubrik India head hire a lot of people from IIT Bombay, Delhi, and Kanpur. So when at the end I had to tell him that, look, I won't be joining because I was the first member in their Indian office to be joining. When I told them that I'm not joining, he was kind enough to write an email to me mentioning that he thanked me for helping him hire a lot of people, and he told that he will in future, if I have to, God forbid, if startup doesn't work and if I have to join a job, then the doors of Rubrik India are always open. So that email was sort of a backup. It was not really a backup for me, but it was a backup in the sense I could show it to my parents that, look, I have something, some cushion, so that if I fall down, then there is always something I can. So, my parents are not that educated. What they don't understand is that in spite of not having a backup of Rubrik, there are many other options where I can go. So, but a written commitment from India head, it definitely helped me convince my parents.
Amazing. So you started off by offering, IT services, right? You worked on ML projects and so on and so forth. What was that like? And also, you made that important transition from services to products, right? Now that is something that literally every services company out there, wants to do, right? At least, the smaller mid-sized IT services company always wants to have that killer product that really scales, and they don't have to add people to scale revenue types, right? So but not a lot of people, not a lot of companies make that cut, right? If you could talk about that services to product transition, and what did you learn in that journey?
So see, when we started, obviously we didn't have any knowledge of the market and the knowledge of the needs of the market. So we said, let's just start something. AI, machine learning, those kind of technologies were hot in the market in 2017. They are even hot today. But at that time, the ecosystem was warming up. So there were entry points, right? So that's where we started to begin with. We took up projects from some of the early customers, SBI Life Insurance, ICICI Bank, and those were around building custom machine learning solutions, something like a search module, a chatbot solution, and so on and so forth. So we were open to build these custom solutions initially to learn rather than to earn, to at least build trust with the customer, to understand the market needs, to get closer to the business problems, right? So that was the objective initially. Over time, so in 2018 August, which is about 1.5 years after starting the company, my co-founder exit. And I got Harshita on board, who is my current co-founder. We can talk about that in detail, how this happened. But broadly, after Harshita got on board, both of us decided that, look, there is no point in doing ad hoc projects. It's not scalable. It won't work on a long term. It will generate some cash flow, let's say, to compensate for the opportunity cost we discussed, but it can't help us build a business out of it, right? A scalable business. So that's when we started focusing on product. And based on services project, we started looking at the pattern, right? You look at what you have done so far, and then you realize that, okay, these are the things which many customers were asking. That's what we also did. Chatbot was quite a common requirement. Plus, we spoke to a couple of other customers also and got that validated. So that's how we were able to nail down on the product piece. But I think the transition obviously was very difficult. Services is easier to build a business on to begin with. It is easier to generate cash flow, but it's not scalable. Product, on the other hand, requires a lot of upfront investment. You need to sort of think of the product, experiment, iterate before you get any revenues. So fortunately for us, it was services that helped us fund the product development.
Right. So what was the key shift in mindset, because I think running a services business, as you mentioned, is very different from running a product business. So as an entrepreneur, what was the key shift in mindset for you between both of these stages?
So I think in product, one needs to think at whatever am I doing, how can it impact the lives of a lot of people? In services, for example, you are looking at just one or two customers using the same solution at most. Ideally it's one, but maybe it's replicable across a couple of other clients at best. So you are impacting a lot less number of people. In product, the impact is much higher. So whenever we are building a feature, we need to think that, can I take it to 10 other customers? Can I take it to 20 other enterprise clients, right? So that's a difference in thinking mindset. In services, obviously you look at the cash flows. You say that, fine, this client is paying me, it will take me 15 days to deliver, I'll do it. In product, you need to question that whether should I do it or not. Will this take me a step closer to my vision for which I have started the product, right? So that is very important. In services, you don't discard anything. You agree to everything, whatever the client says, because whatever you deliver, you make money on that. In product, it is important to decide what not to do rather than what to do. So a lot of features will come, clients will tell you their own problems. They will also recommend solutions how they want it to be. In product, you can't accept that. You have to question it. That number one, is this the right solution to the problem that client is asking? Number two, if not, then what are the other solutions, right? Number three, is this problem relevant for my product at all? Should I even solve this problem with my product, or should I say that no, this is an unrelated problem? So that mindset shift is very, very important when someone is thinking services versus someone is thinking product.
Right. So what makes this even more amazing is if I look at your client list, right? I mean, it's like SBI, Kotak, ICICI. I mean, these are large enterprises, right? And what are they doing working with a kid out of college? I mean, how do you manage to convince these large enterprises?
So you would be surprised that being a kid actually helps, right? Because people don't feel defensive. People look at you as academicians, students, young entrepreneurs trying to do something for the nation, as against salespeople, right? People, I'm sure you would agree that a lot of people do not like salespeople that much. So we never. Clients never felt threatened from us. Even the youngest person in a typical enterprise will be 25 years or maybe older, right? So when we started, we were 21, 22 years of age. So nobody felt threatened because of us. That was the most important point. We played our cards, to be very frank. We used to tell them that, look, boss, everybody is complaining about IITians going outside India. Here are IITians building something for India. If you can't help us, then who will help us? So obviously you need to sort of hit them in the heart rather than the brain. They will bet on your potential as compared to your product. When we started working with SBI as our first client, we were a 2-member team. There was not, even the company was not incorporated. SBI told us, go and incorporate a company. We can't work with you without that. And we did not know that we need to incorporate a company, right? We were programmers out there. So they bet on our potential. They bet on the fact that these people can do something over time. And today, obviously, the State Bank Group is our big customer, SBI General, SBI Life, SBI Mutual Fund, SBI Cap Securities. We work with all of them. So that's what they bet on. Secondly, I think in these businesses, trust matters a lot more than the quality of the product. The vice president who is signing your purchase order is concerned more about not losing his salary rather than the impact of the product. Right? Unless the product is super impactful, a few lakhs or crores of PNL here and there won't really matter. But what will really matter is if the service provider screws up and the job is lost. They don't want to get into that. So that's why we went through a lot of our references. One of our advisors, for example, was the ex-CEO of ICICI Housing Finance. So he helped us get into ICICI Bank. Another advisor helped us get into Kotak Bank. So he had a lot of connects. He also helped us get into Bajaj Group. So references coming from senior people who have a proven track record, people who have worked in the industry for, let's say, several decades of time, them recommending us, right? So that helped us build a lot of credibility. And how did we get these people on board? These were the people with whom we connected in the 4th year of college. So when my previous co-founder and I, we were a part of the entrepreneurship program within IIT Bombay, we interacted with a lot of such senior veterans, industry veterans who were sort of adjunct faculty members and professors in the department. So they were themselves entrepreneurs. They were not academicians. They had built their own companies, sold them. Some of them even have listed companies in the NASDAQ in the US, right? So they bring a lot of credibility on the table. And being connected with them helped us get that credibility. The tag of IIT obviously helped us get an entry, get a foot in the door. And lastly, all of this is useful only if you can deliver. If you don't deliver, they will not work with you. So we delivered. Whatever we promised, we delivered. So that's how we were able to acquire customers. And one important thing we realized over time was, if we acquire the bank as the customer, right, the group companies will come for free. When I say for free, without much of effort, because the bank is the larger piece. They are highly regulated. They are much bigger, and they have a lot of sort of approvals and systems and processes in place. So if you have, for example, ICICI Bank as the customer, ICICI Securities, ICICI Lombard, ICICI Prudential, they will come at a much easier time requirement, because you can tell them that, look, bank is my customer, and you can ask them for a reference. So we obviously work that way. That's why you see all the groups are there: ICICI Group, State Bank Group, Kotak Group, Aditya Birla Group, Bajaj Group, HDFC Group. So that's how we operate.
Right. And I've heard you say that distribution is key, right? And that's such an important point. It's a very mature point to actually make, because, being an engineer, you can get into this whole product building mindset and then build, ad nauseum, right? But it's so important to have a distribution focus. You mentioned advisors getting you into some of these accounts and so on, right? What was your distribution strategy like?
So we learned very early about distribution. Why? Because I had a blog on IIT preparation in my second year of college. So that helped me understand how to acquire users, how to acquire customers. So I mean, in some ways, it was the first step. It was a very basic step, I would say, but it was the first step towards understanding how customers and distribution work. So we figured out that in our industry, which is large financial institutions, trust sells a lot more than product. So our strategy was very simple. We used to scan the LinkedIn network of our mentors and advisors and used to ask them for connect requests. So, I mean, we made it very effortless for our advisors. We used to tell them that, look, just, I mean, we'll go through your LinkedIn profile and we will send you a list of people who will be, who you can let me know if they are connected with you actually or not. I mean, many times we accept LinkedIn requests from unknown people, right? So we used to do that effort so as to acquire customers through our advisor network. So that was number one. In fact, we went to that level that, let's say some advisor says, fine, I will introduce you to Kotak Group. So we used to tell him, sir, we will send you a write-up. You don't even have to create a write-up. We'll send you a write-up. You can copy paste over email because I mean, you understand it in their terms. If they start describing or if they have to write a long write-up, they will sort of delay it. They have other things on the table as well. So we used to make it very effortless and frictionless for them. That was the first part. Second part is
no, I'd like to pause there because that's such an important point, right? Because oftentimes you have people reaching out for help, and if they only follow these 2 or 3 things that you're talking about, which is give proper context, maybe pre-draft a message, tell exactly what you want, etc. Right? I mean, I think it would 10x their conversions on any of these things, right?
Absolutely. So, in fact, I will go to that extent. Let's say you have a friend called Aman, right? And you are writing on behalf of trying to introduce Cogno. So I will send you a write-up which says, when you can copy paste. So, hi Aman, please meet so and so from Cogno AI, and I would like to introduce. So we used to personalize the write-up as if you are writing to the other person. So you can literally copy paste. So that made the process very effortless for our advisors who are themselves busy people. So that really helped us acquire a lot of customers. So one of our advisors, in fact, he helped us acquire a bunch of early clients. I mean, there are so many, if I can name Kotak Group, Nippon Mutual Fund, Bajaj Group, and so on and so forth. Secondly, like the strategy I told you, right? Acquire the bank and go to the subsidiaries. That also helps because all of them have very large revenue potential. Even the subsidiary of a large bank is a large organization, right? ICICI Securities is extremely big. Kotak Securities is extremely big. So use them as the acquisition strategy. Thirdly, what we understood is that there is a huge scope of expansion within an organization of our product. So to sell the first unit to the first customer. So let's see. So we are in conversational AI space and chatbot space. It could be used for customer support. It could be used for employee support. It could be used for recruitment. And there are, 30 plus use cases in a bank, let's say. So let's say we enter with customer support team. To complete that sale, we need to go through a bunch of approvals: business approval, IT approval, information security approval, legal approval, compliance approval, finance approval, procurement approval. But when I go to second team, let's say the HR team, I can tell them that, look, boss, I have all the necessary approvals in place already, right? The 7 out of 8 approvals which are required, I already have in place. I have a standardized pricing model with your organization already. And look, you can talk to the other team. They are already working with us. So this way we were able to expand within the company. So one is expand within the group across entities, and within each entity, we were able to expand rapidly. So that helped us build a very good revenue stream. So these two were the sort of customer acquisition strategies in the very early days. Obviously, we continue to use these strategies, but now we have scalable channels. Like, for example, we have an outbound business development team. We have a channel partnerships team, which partners with other companies to sort of take their help to sell our products to their customers. So, multiple methods. Exotel has a lot of, I would say, large customer base. That Exotel is a company that acquired us. So we are leveraging on all of that.
Right. So this land and expand strategy, right? I mean, it's amazing, but it's also not as simple as you make it out to be, right? I mean, it's pretty complicated as well because stakeholders within the bank can have different priorities, right? So business may think one direction, IT may think a different way, and so on, right? So how did you align each of these people's priorities? Because business may get excited by the impact of some of the outcomes that you can deliver, and so on, right? And especially, I think your business during COVID would have become even more important, right? But then IT may have concerns on security, scalability, and so on and so forth, right? So how do you steer all of these in the same direction?
Right. So I'll answer the second question first, that IT may have concerns on security, scalability. Look, those concerns happened with the first few clients, but later on, you can always take the references of these first few clients to enter, to give them confidence. See, obviously there are processes and audits in place, right? But the biggest thing is to give them confidence. So number one confidence is that, look, the founder himself is a programmer from computer science IIT Bombay, right? So look, I mean, I'm not a security expert at all, right? I'm not even a technical expert, I would say, but a background in programming and technical degree, it obviously gives them a lot of comfort. Number two, taking a few names, right? If you take the name of ICICI, Kotak Bank, HDFC Bank, right? It gives them a lot of confidence that these guys are working already with large people. They would have already gone through rigorous audits with these companies. So for us, it will be a replication of the process rather than inventing something new. Third thing, which you asked, is about how did you align the stakeholders? See, the biggest factor in all of this is the business priority. If the business says that I want this solution, I want to acquire more leads through chatbot, or I want to build a solution in which my customer support some portion is automated, or I want to push notifications to people on WhatsApp, then IT has to do it. I mean, it's they typically, the IT team is working very closely with business team, and business teams already give requirements to IT team about these solutions. So we never face this problem, but if at all such a problem comes, we always go back to the business person and say, look, boss, because IT is not cooperating, your timelines will get delayed, and so much will be the business loss for you as an opportunity cost for the delay. So those are some of the ways to sort of move things ahead.
Right. And building for the enterprise is a very specialized sort of a journey, right? Because I mean, at some level, I mean, you will end up being a bit of a services arm itself for them, because they will have 100 ideas that they'll want you to implement. And when someone is paying you as much as they pay, as typical enterprise pay you, it's very hard to say no, right? So how do you manage to build with the enterprise and also maintain your product roadmap and stay true to your vision?
So see, there are a couple of ways by which we do it. The most important way is enterprises will tell you features that they want to be a part of the product. As a product person, you have to go back to them and say, why do you want this feature? What problem are you trying to solve? And possibly suggest them a better solution, which aligns with the product roadmap that you are trying to build. So I think that's the most important factor if we all learn it. See, they are not the solution people. I mean, if they were solution people, they would have not hired us. So they will typically tell something as a requirement that, look, this is my business requirement. We need to go back. We ask them questions. We sit with them and understand that why are they asking this? Why do they want this feature? And eventually, if you keep on probing them, it will turn out to be a very fundamental problem. And then our team then sits and discusses that what could be solutions to this problem that the customer is asking. And there we propose solutions which we know that will work with multiple customers. So that way the product development does not, I mean, it's not spread across. It's not fallen into pieces. That's something for ICICI, something for Kotak, something for SBI. It doesn't work that way. So that's the most important thing. Second, obviously, the most important thing is to try and stay ahead of the market. Why do you have to let the customer come and give you a requirement? Why can't we study the market, understand the pain point, and from there we build the features upfront? So that's, I mean, obviously it's not a foolproof strategy, but we try very aggressively doing it. We understand the market trends, we understand what other competitors doing. We look at the technology pattern, that what new technologies are coming up, and incorporate it into our product as quickly as possible. And lastly, it boils down to expectation setting, right? You need to tell the customer that, look, there are product constraints at my end. If you ask for features overnight, it will result in features which are buggy, which might lead to production issues, which might lead to security vulnerabilities. So we also have to go through a process. So any rational client will understand all of this.
I think, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think if you do a proper jobs to be done sort of an exercise with most of the asks that you get, I mean, you will be able to abstract it to certain general features that may be applicable to 20 other clients that you are servicing, for sure, right? I mean, I think also it requires a little bit of a spine to not say yes blindly to everything that a client asks you, right? Because sometimes, in fact, a lot of the times it may not be in the interest of the client itself, right? Because as you mentioned, I mean, they're great at presenting problems. Perhaps they're not the best at solving them themselves. Right?
Exactly.
Right. So you raised one small round, I think, if I remember, like if I know this correctly, right? And with the traction that you've had and with the background that you have, the team and everything, right? I mean, was it a conscious decision not to raise more funding as such?
So see, yes, it was a conscious decision to not raise funding. So we have raised some 30 lakhs total funding in our journey. So the first round, I mean, it was not a round, to be very frank. We were incubated at IIT Bombay Startup Incubator. So as a part of the process, they invest a small amount of money and take a small amount of equity. So that's when we got 2.5 lakhs. Really, it was not funding. I mean, 2.5 lakhs cannot do anything for you, right? It's not a big amount. And another angel investor he joined us as a part of our journey. So in 2019, so he invested some, I think 25 lakhs or something around that. So that's all the funding we have raised, right? The first funding was to become a part of IIT Bombay Incubation Center. The second funding was to partner with this person as an angel investor. These were not fundings. These were ways to ensure they have skin in the game. Now, coming to the second part of your question, that was it a conscious decision? Yes. So from day one, we were of the view that we need to be customer funded rather than investor funded, right? So, I mean, there is nothing right or wrong about raising funds or not raising funds. There are pros and cons, right? If you have funds, you can hire much better people, you can grow much faster. But if you don't have funds, you have finer control of the company and so on and so forth, right? You can take decisions, you can fail without any obligation of feeling bad that, look, I let down my investors. So it's a matter of one's personal choice. We figured out that for our business, number one, we will be profitable because customers are paying us. So we typically have a subscription-based model. Many clients pay annually in advance. Enterprises are happy to sign contracts and pay upfront. So we said that, look, if we have positive cash flows, then we don't have to worry about funding that much. Number two, initially we were able to reduce the cost because let's say if I'm writing program, right? I mean, whatever be the salary of a person of, let's say my level, that is getting free because I'm not drawing salary on day one. So that way we were able to keep the cost low. And third, and I would say most important thing is it's about the mindset. We were of the view that we want flexibility. If something goes wrong, we don't want any third person to be dictating that this is how we should do things. We wanted to fail, we wanted to experiment, and we wanted to rise up again. So that's where we said it's better to experiment with our own money, with our own self, rather than involving a third person and have a lack of flexibility.
Yeah, that's amazing because the space in which you operate is again so hot, right? I mean, and we've seen SaaS itself, how many deals have happened over the last year, 2 years especially, right? And when you see like a competitor of yours raise like 70-75 million dollars in funding, right? What goes through your mind? I mean, what do you think, right? Basically, I mean, do you feel like oh my God, I mean, or have you felt before that, probably I should have raised a little amount of funding, maybe, how will I compete with this person? And, do you have that freak out at all?
So see, the good part about our space is that funding doesn't matter. There are competitors who have pitched to our clients saying we will give it to you for free for 1 year. And the client did not bat an eye. For the simple reason that something which is costing, let's say 6, 7, 8, 10 lakhs per year, I mean, client doesn't care. A large enterprise will have thousands of crores of IT budgets. A solution worth 10 lakhs per year is definitely not worth replacing, not worth taking the risk of replacing with some other service provider and then later facing a heat of the service provider not delivering as per the standards. So large enterprises I have seen, they optimize for downside a lot. They don't want service provider going bankrupt. They don't want any data breach. They don't want any SLA breach, which is a service level agreement. They don't want any random service issues in general, right? Support not being provided properly. So if they have a consistency, they have seen that, okay, Cogno AI team is delivering well from the last 6 months, irrespective of the cost of the other person, right? The delta, they will not shift very easily. Obviously, that means, number one, we need to maintain our standards. Number two, we need to ensure that the price differentiation does not become so much that the customer starts shifting, starts to think to shift. So let's say if I'm charging 5 crores per year, hypothetically, then obviously someone says that I'll give you for 2 crores per year, it's a lot of delta. But if I'm charging 10 lakhs per year and someone gives it for free, 10 lakhs per year is definitely not worth the effort. The shifting time will be too much and the risk will be too high, as I mentioned. Secondly, you may ask, fine, you were able to defend your existing customers. How about new customers? How do you sort of defend them? How do you make sure that your competitor does not enter those customers, right? So see, all of these enterprises have a process of evaluating 2-3 service providers. It's not like some competitor went and pitched and they bought it from them. They will always look at other service providers in the market. Because we focused on financial services as a space, we were always invited to the party. And when we are invited to the party, we will show that, look, we have so many logos already. So that helped us win over competitors. So I think the biggest turning point, I would say, was to focus on one space. We said that from our side, we will not go outside financial services. We had channel partners who took our product and sold it outside financial services, but we from our side never went. Even today, when we have sort of been acquired by Exotel team is switching to all sort of clients in all sort of spaces, but we are still laser focused on BFSI, which is banking, financial services, insurance, because we know that's our strongest area. We know that we will be able to win customers very easily.
Right. And again, that choice of verticalization also was a very deliberate choice, or because I mean, the solution that you offer is extremely horizontal, right? I mean, you could use chatbots in any number of industries. So why limit yourself only to BFSI? I mean, of course, I mean, it would have helped on business development, as you mentioned, right? If an HDFC and ICICI is using it, likely that an IDFC or someone else might even, adopt the solution. But were you not tempted to like look beyond financial services?
We did that in the beginning, but we faced a lot of problems. Customers asking for a dirt cheap price, 10,000 rupees a month, 5,000 rupees a month. It makes no sense, right? One will bleed money. In BFSI, people are happy to pay in lakhs rather than in thousands. So that was the most important point. Secondly, we realized that, look, our business is not like Amazon Prime, where customer comes to the website, swipes a credit card or a debit card and purchases a product. Ours is a sales-led model. It's not a product or a marketing-led model, which means for us, the resource constraint will always be there. I mean, I need to figure out that, look, I have a team of, let's say, 50 people. What do I do the best with this team? So if a team member of mine is focusing on selling a 10,000 rupees per month deal rather than a 50,000 or a 1 lakh per month deal, it's a loss for me. So that's why we said, given the constraints we have, that we can't double the number of people overnight, or we can't make them 4 times in 1 month. The hiring will happen over time, right? It will take its own time. So which means we need to utilize the human resources judiciously. We need to think. So that's when we said, look, financial services is the space which will give us the maximum ROI. There are enough banks, there are enough life insurance, mutual funds, and stockbroking companies in the country that we can work on this space without sort of hitting the ceiling of the market. Plus, within a bank, right, there are in itself a lot of use cases or requirements for our solutions. So it makes no sense to unnecessarily try. I mean, even till date, we don't have Yes Bank as a customer, right? Why should I go to, hypothetically speaking, why should I go to, let's say, a Sony or a Panasonic if I don't have a Yes Bank as a client? Right. So it will be always easier for me to go to, if I go to Yes Bank, I can give them 50 references. If I go to Sony, the first thing they will ask me, what have you done in electronic appliances space? I mean, I don't know, right? So that's why we said we want to stay bootstrapped. That was a conscious decision, which means we need to use resources judiciously. So let's focus on financial services.
Right. And also, I guess that's also the advantage of not having investors on board, right? I mean, given that, you didn't have to worry about TAM, you didn't have to worry about board meetings or investor returns and so on and so forth. So you could choose to be quirky in that sense, right? So you could choose to do what you want. Something you mentioned earlier is so important, right? I mean, because I think what you said was large enterprises, focus on, hedging risks of downside, which is such an important point, because I mean, I think if you ask any normal, a person starting out this, journey, right? I mean, their first instinct will be to lower the price. The larger the client they go to, I mean, the first instinct will be like, hey, let me just cut them a deal at whatever price, right? And let me just give it to them at throwaway price. But they're actually focused on quality. I think that's a fantastic insight, right? So this acquisition by Exotel, right? How did it come about?
So it's a long story. So basically, I had met one of the partners at A91 Partners, Mr. Abhay Pandey. He's an IIT Bombay alum. So I met him in an IIT Bombay session in 2019. So obviously his story is quite inspiring. I have read about him, how he rose ranks in the industry. He happens to be an IIT Bombay computer science alum itself. So I met him at his office, and he connected me with his another partner, Kaushik. So this is 2019, around, I think, October, November sometime. So after 1 year, obviously, I mean, I met him generally. I didn't meet him to raise funds. And secondly, I knew that they are a Series B, Series C stage investor, while we were at seed stage at that time. So it was just to meet. I like meeting smart people. I like meeting people with whom I can learn. So I met them, and they were quite helpful. They guided me on some of the challenges in the business and so on and so forth. Right? After 1 year, Kaushik mailed me asking how things are going on. It was, I'm sure he would have snoozed his inbox or something like that, right? Typically, venture capitalists do that. So A91 Partners, by the way, is a very well-known, reputed VC fund, late stage. So when he connected, then that's when the conversation started. A91 Partners at that time was investing in Exotel. The round was not yet announced, but obviously Kaushik was involved in the deal, so he knew it. And the first thing investors try to do is help you in recruitment. Recruitment also means acquisition, right? Which means you onboard a full-fledged business unit. I mean, I can onboard someone who has marketing expertise, or I can onboard someone who has a full-fledged expertise in BFSI domain, building solutions and products. So that's when he started a conversation, and he introduced me to Shivku. Around, I think, December. That's when the round of A91 Partners was announced, and I could connect the dots. January last year, which is 1 year back, Shivku and I interacted. Shivku is the founder of Exotel. We discussed ideas, we discussed collaboration opportunities. Shivku wanted to understand how are we looking at our growth, what are we planning. So at that time, obviously, like because of COVID, we had a very sort of bull run, right? And I was in no mood of talking any acquisition. I was open to a sales partnership, nothing like Exotel selling our product to 6,000 customers, but I was not open to any acquisition at that time because we were growing very fast. Plus, just 1 month back, we had ended conversations of acquisition with another company, and it did not go well, right? I mean, they were not valuing us that well. So this is January last year. After that, COVID second wave happened. The conversations paused. That also helped me to think and reflect, right? And the second wave, I'm sure all of us know that it was very bad for the country. Many of our customers had problems and like situations in their family also. So business was a little slow, and at that time, it helped me think and reflect on what am I doing, what opportunities we have in table, where to go from now, from here, right? So right after second wave, again, the conversation of acquisition was started. I ended up chatting with Kaushik from A91. He again connected me with Shivku. At that time, I remember I was at my uncle's home, sort of relaxing and chilling around. Because of COVID second wave, I had been inside home for 3-4 months, right? So that's when the whole conversation started, and they ended up extending an offer. So they asked me what sort of offers I'm looking for if I were to sell, and so on and so forth. We discussed, we negotiated, and we agreed on something. But broadly, like apart from the cash, apart from the stock, apart from everything, the monetary benefit, the biggest thing which we saw were, number one, synergies in building products together. So Exotel has a suite of telephony-based products. We have a suite of chat-based products. If we come together, we have everything a contact center needs. So we have telephony, we have WhatsApp, we have SMS, we have chatbots, we have co-browsing, we have video calling, we have live chat, we have everything. So if a business wants to run a contact center efficiently, they don't have to juggle across 10 service providers, integrating with each other, getting all proposals, and then coordinating the operations, support, and all of that. They can come to us, we will be the single point of contact, and we will give you everything, give them everything. So when Shivku painted that picture in front of me, I was quite, I would say, intrigued. It made sense, right? It helped us complete our suite. It helped them complete their suite. So that was the most important part. They had also acquired Ameo in June 2021. So Ameo is one of the largest contact center players. So them coming together means all these tools can be integrated in one dashboard of Ameo. So it actually made a lot of sense for us from a business perspective. Lastly, we thought that with Exotel customers, we can grow much faster. If we were to acquire, let's say, 5,000-6,000 customers on our own, it will take us decades. It will take us several months or even a decade, right? Exotel has been there for 11 years. So why not short circuit it? Why not ride on top of Exotel and get it much faster? So, and one last point is that Harshita is my co-founder. We wanted to spend more time on our core competency. So let's say I'm a business person, I want to spend more time solving business problems. Harshita is a product and engineering person. She wants to spend more time building products and building technology. As entrepreneur, you have to do a lot of things. Like I'm spending a lot of time in finance, vendor payments, payroll processing, leaves, reimbursements, accounts, a lot of. So we said if we partner with a larger entity, these all things will be taken care of. So, they have a basic infrastructure in place. They have a fantastic HR team. They have a proper finance function, CFO vertical in place. So all of these things, we are obviously now taking help from Exotel. So that helps us sort of utilize our own time to the maximum. Right. So these were the synergies.
Yeah, that's an underappreciated aspect of being a startup founder, right? How many things outside of product and sales that you have to do, right? That you have to reluctantly do all of that admin work that really, really kills you actually.
Especially if you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, especially if you're bootstrapped, right? So, it's been an interesting journey for you, right? Starting this right out of college, bootstrapping your way into acquisition. that's pretty phenomenal. So what is the reset that you're doing at this point of time to look ahead for the next 4, 5, 10 years?
So, I think my journey so far, as you mentioned, has been very exciting. Starting a company from scratch, bootstrapping it to, let's say, a few millions in revenue, sort of getting it acquired. Now, at a leadership position in a mid-stage company. And Exotel soon, I hope and I pray that they will become big, they will go public, or they become much bigger, right? So it will help me see the whole journey. So I think at less than the age of 30 years, I would have seen all the journey. I would have not just seen, I would have participated very actively, starting from scratch, starting from zero. So that will be not only a big achievement for me, but also a big learning experience for me. Right. So that is number one. Number two, I think Exotel will definitely go on to build one of the largest businesses in this emerging market space. So I want to see that happening. I want to see that how they geographically expand to nearshore geographies, how they will expand across sectors. They cater to a lot of sectors, but how to grow further, right? There are many sectors which we don't cater to. So that will be quite, I would say, something I'm looking forward to. And lastly, because they are a much larger organization, they are much matured. Exotel and Ameo combined have like 1,000 people. We were less than 100 people, or about 100 people. So there are structures, systems, processes, guidelines. So some of them obviously are not that great. You don't want approvals from a lot of people, but a lot of things are very, very good. In Exotel, I've seen the way they operate, the structure, the mechanism. So I think we really look forward to that. So I'll give you some example. We don't have proper revenue targets in place, but they aggressively look at revenue targets. They look at the timelines. They look at breakdown by product, breakdown by geography. So I really enjoyed that. It helps me learn how to organize a company and plan ahead, rather than just saying, let's try our best effort. It doesn't work that way. So those things I really look forward to in the next 3 to 5 years. Beyond that, I don't know. Haven't thought about it yet.
Amazing. So behind every fairy tale ending, right, there's obviously like a lot of hard times as well leading up to it, and you've seen hard times. You've seen your co-founder exit. You've seen almost a near zero on your bank balance, and so on. And given that you all always had this sort of a backup as well of that IIT Bombay computer science degree and that job offer at hand, how do you not go back? How do you persist through all of these problems and see it through?
So first thing is that mentally I have convinced myself that there is no backup. That's the most important thing. To the outside world, including my parents, for example, they see that their son has a backup. But mentally for me, not being in business is not a backup at all. It's a personal choice. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing right about it. But I personally feel that I have to be in business. I have to build something. Right. So that's the first point. Second point is, look, at the end of the day, I have seen one thing. Nothing motivates an entrepreneur more than having paying customers on the table. Very early in our journey, we learned that we should focus only and only on acquiring customers rather than chasing investors, for example, chasing hackathons, awards, recognitions, prizes, including podcasts, I would say. Like I have stayed away from all of these things. A few awards here and there from customers are fine.
Thank you for making the exception on this one.
Yeah, definitely. So, but not getting swayed away. So if you have customers who are trusting you, who are willing to pay, whatever problem you are in, whatever situation you are in, you can always get out of that. Like Mark Cuban, who is an entrepreneur I admire, and I've seen a lot of his shows in Shark Tank, right? He always says that sales cures everything. If you have revenue on the table, you can cure any problem in business because customer money is there, right? You have someone who is willing to pay for your product and services. You can always leverage that to build a team and grow further from there. It was a similar situation with us also. When my co-founder left, there were about 50 lakhs worth of purchase orders on the table, which were waiting to be delivered. I think some 30 lakhs worth of negotiation on the table and 25 lakhs worth of purchase order on the table. So negotiation, late stage negotiation. So together it was, we ended up around 50.5 lakhs worth of revenue in the next few months, right? So that was the motivation. I had customers who are saying that, look, we'll pay you. And it's a lot of money. It's not pennies and dollars. It's lakhs of rupees. So we said there is no reason we should quit at this stage. So I think that's the most important point. And it's a personal burden which every entrepreneur carry, that I don't have to let my team down. I don't have to let my parents down. I don't have to let my customers down. I also had that sort of thought in my mind that I can't do it. More than anyone else, I can't let my own self down.
Amazing. When you talk, it's really difficult to reconcile to the fact that you're a really young person, right? You just graduated college 4 years back, 2017, right? And you've had to learn a bunch of things on the fly, right? Because this is pretty much your first job, aside from the 3 months internship that you did, and you've learned various aspects, sales, product, marketing, whatever else, right? What was the most difficult thing to learn in this journey?
I think hiring is the most difficult thing because everything else somehow works out. I have seen that you look at so for example, I figured out that I'm a programmer, but I like talking to people. I like selling. I like interacting with customers, right? So that's why I naturally got myself into sales. Same way Harshita naturally got into product. But then you get another talented person. Because of lack of funds, we obviously hired a lot of freshers. So let's say someone is good at programming, you know that. But if someone is good at talking, they could be into sales, they could be into operations, they could be into customer success, they could be into business development, they could be into product management. How do you decide that? And if they turn out to be a misfit, how do you move them within? How do you keep them motivated? How do you manage the opportunity cost and the cost? I mean, the cost is not a problem. Let's say someone is at 1 lakh per month. They didn't work for, let's say, 3 months. They didn't deliver the ROI. You lose 3 lakhs. But the ROI of that position would be, let's say, 5 times, 15 lakhs, which was lost. So, yeah, but at the same time, let's say the person is talented, they are motivated, you need to keep them. So that was the hardest part, getting right people on board. And number two, making sure that they are given the right kind of activities. Number three, if they are not able to deliver it, but obviously they are good by attitude, then how do you fit them within the company? Because you don't want to lose people who you know have the right attitude. So even today we make mistakes in hiring. Even today, like we hired people, it did not work out. People tried to backstab. People tried to not. I mean, many times you end up hiring people who will think that they have been issued ESOPs. So I mean, they don't have to do anything because ESOPs will magically grow. It doesn't work. We still. I mean, we recently faced one of this situation, right? So that becomes difficult. Even I think it's a problem of not just me. It's a problem of every entrepreneur. Even Steve Jobs ended up making mistakes when he hired the CEO of Apple long back. I don't know if you've heard or seen in his documentary, right? So if at that level that mistakes happen, so I'm just starting up.
What is your advice to other young entrepreneurs who may be listening to this podcast? Because I think it's a different world in 2022, right? I mean, there's so much of money floating around, right? And there's so much of optimism. What are those common mistakes that a founder should avoid?
So I think number one, chasing investors instead of chasing customers. That's one big mistake. Investors come because of customers, not the other way. Try and chase traction. You will always get the right set of talent, right set of investors, right set of advisors. What's most important is having customers on the table. That's number one. Because in IITs, for example, there is a trend of chasing investors first. Even when I started, we were shouting, let's get investors, right? But advisors told us, look, boss, you first get customers and then think anything else. So that is number one. Number two is focus. So because an entrepreneur or someone who is starting up, if they are talented, if they are sort of creative, they can solve every problem, but they have limited time. So they have to decide what not to solve rather than what to solve. I think one of my advisors used to say, strategy is not about the 2% that you have to do. It's about 98% that you have to decide not to do. There's always an opportunity cost. As I told you, if my team member is selling to an SMB for 10,000 rupees a month, a small and a medium business, they are losing the time they could have spent on selling for 1 lakh a month to a large enterprise. So that's quite an important point, which means we need to decide what not to do and focus on certain segments. So because I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs try to chase everything. We were also told that, why are you so focused on BFSI? Why don't you go to every other segment? Right? We knew that even today, all of my team members acknowledge that we would have been killed by our competition who raised a lot of funding if we would have gone and chased every segment. So one of the large companies CEO, I met him. They are a competitor of ours. And he told that we have instructed our sales guys to not touch financial services space because wherever we are going, we are listening to Cogno. So we were able to build this defensible position because of focus. So entrepreneurs, especially the young ones, they should really, really focus on building one thing. They should not get swayed away by a lot of things in the market. And lastly, I would say, don't quit. There will be a lot of challenges. There will be a lot of situations where you will face a lot of problems. But it's like COVID situation, right? When the market tanked, but markets recovered. If the companies are fundamentally good, the businesses are good, the management is good, they will recover. Same happens in a business. If you are inherently good and you know it, then don't quit.
Right. Yeah. Nothing is as good or as bad as you think it is. Right.
Exactly.
In the 150 plus conversations that I've had with founders on the podcast, one thing that strikes me is that nobody is on their first idea. Everyone is on their second or third idea. Right. I mean, so which means that they just persisted longer than what others would have. Right. So yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating chat. Before we leave you, any books or podcasts that you would recommend to our listeners?
So I think there are a few books that I really find useful. There's a book called The Hard Thing About the Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. It's a fantastic book. I absolutely loved reading that book. There is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Again, another book on habit building, building processes and systems, repeatable mechanisms. So that is another great book. And the third book I really think every entrepreneur should read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It talks about money management. It talks about the mindset. So, I there are a lot of books I can go on recommending. I read a lot, but these are the top three that come to my mind.
Amazing. So thank you so much for this conversation, Aman. And I'm really, really happy that you made the exception for the Startup Operator podcast, right? And wonderful to hear of all of your success. And it's really inspiring for everyone who's listening to the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roshan. It's a pleasure to be a part of the podcast. And I think it's very unique and different and as compared to others. So I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also, follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.